What would you do if you picked up your wife's phone and the first thing you saw was a midnight message saying, "I miss your body," from a man you've never even heard of? 3 days ago, that happened to me. And in that moment, my whole world didn't just shake, it collapsed. I didn't scream, I didn't confront her. I did something colder. I hired a private investigator, because if my marriage was a lie, I needed the truth. All of it. 4 hours later, the PI sent me a single video, and the moment I hit play, I realized everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. But you know what? You haven't heard the worst part yet. Stick with me. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because once you find out what was in that video, everything will make sense. Before I tell you what was in that video, you need to know who I was and what I thought I had. My name's Travis Callahan. I'm a systems engineer in Plano, Texas. Nothing fancy. I go to work, I fix problems, I come home to a little brick house in the suburbs with a 2-car garage, a beat-up grill on the patio, and a 65-inch TV mounted on the wall. For 8 years, I thought my marriage to Rachel was solid. We had our Starbucks runs on Saturday mornings, grocery trips to Target, lazy Sundays with the Cowboys game humming in the background while dinner simmered on the stove. My older brother Mark and his wife Jenna live 15 minutes away. We did double dates, backyard barbecues, Thanksgiving at our place one year, at theirs the next. It felt like we weren't just two couples. We were a little tribe. And I used to say this line all the time like an idiot who thought he'd figured life out. If you don't have trust, you don't have a marriage. Lucky for us, we've got plenty. I really believe that. At least, I did. Until that morning. We didn't start out with the house and the big TV and the game on every Sunday. In our 20s, it was a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls and a mattress on the floor. I was juggling entry-level IT jobs. She was working odd shifts at a retail store. Some nights we ate ramen and called it date night just to make it feel less cheap. We climbed out of that together. Promotion by promotion, raise by raise. The day we closed on our first house in Plano, I remember standing on the front porch, looking at the little patch of grass, the white mailbox, the stupid porch light that flickered, and thinking, this is it. We're building a life. We started traveling when we could afford it. Vegas, Nashville, a beach in Florida. We framed the photos and hung them in the hallway like trophies, proof that we'd made it further than we were supposed to. At some point, sharing passwords felt like the ultimate sign of trust. Email, Facebook, bank apps, no secrets. I wore that like a badge of honor. When the guys at work asked how married life was, I'd just shrug and say, she's my person. I didn't know back then that the trust I was so proud of would one day become the weapon used against me. The day everything snapped didn't start with fireworks. It started with a text from my brother. It was a Saturday morning. Rachel was still dead asleep next to me, hair all over the pillow, phone on the nightstand. I heard that sharp little iPhone ping. Mark's name popped up on her screen. He was asking about the girls' trip Rachel and Jenna were planning. Nothing weird about that. We'd talked about it all week. I picked up her phone, half smiling, thinking I'd mess with Jenna a little. You know, send some dumb joke from Rachel's phone, give her a hard time about dragging my wife away for the weekend. I unlocked it, slid into iMessage, and that's when I saw it. Right at the top of her conversations, above Mark, above me, Evan. The most recent line under his name was just one word and an emoji. Night. Sent at 2:13 a.m. My eyes stuck on that little heart next to his name. For a second, the whole room went quiet. My pulse didn't speed up. It dropped. I could have backed out right there. Put the phone down, tell myself it was nothing, go make coffee. But my thumb moved on its own. I tapped on Evan. The whole thread opened up, months of messages stacked on top of each other. At first it was light, little jokes, inside references I didn't get. Then it slid into late-night stuff, the kind of talk you don't even want your buddies to see, let alone your husband. Messages like, "Next time I'm on your couch, I want your hands on me the way you promised." And she answered him, in detail. Then came the pictures. Her body, his, sent between 1 and 4 in the morning, on nights I remember rolling over and kissing her shoulder before going back to sleep, thinking she was just scrolling TikTok. I was standing in the kitchen by then, phone in my hand, bare feet on the tile. The only light in the room was that screen, burning my face. I remember whispering, more to myself than anyone, "I feel like a complete fool." And here's the thing about that moment. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I don't even remember walking to the bathroom. One second I was staring at those messages, the next I was gripping the edge of the sink, looking at myself in the mirror. I looked old. Not in age, in disappointment, in stupidity. My chest was tight. Part of me wanted to storm back into the bedroom, flip on the light, throw the phone at her and scream, "Explain this!" I could picture it. Her crying, swearing it was a mistake, blaming the alcohol, saying it didn't mean anything. And a different voice in my head said, "Yeah, and then what? She deletes everything, changes the story, and when it's time to protect yourself, you've got nothing." I stepped out of the bathroom and looked at her. Rachel was still asleep on her side, face relaxed, breathing slow, like she didn't have a care in the world. That's when something in me hardened. I walked back to the kitchen, opened the messages again, and started taking screenshots. Every text, every picture, every baby, and "can't wait to feel you again." I emailed them all to a backup account she didn't know existed. From that moment on, I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was gathering evidence. But what chilled me the most wasn't the messages at 3 a.m. It was how she acted just minutes after I read them. What she did next made me realize how easily someone can hide behind a smile. The messed up part? The rest of that morning looked normal. I made coffee. I fried eggs and bacon. I packed the dishwasher. On the outside, I was just another husband in Plano on a Saturday morning, moving through the same routine I'd done 100 times. Rachel came into the kitchen in her oversized t-shirt, kissed my cheek, grabbed a mug. "Smells good," she said, like nothing in our world had shifted 3 inches to the left. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. Ding. I didn't even have to look. I knew who it was. She glanced at the screen, picked it up a little too fast, and walked out, straight to the bathroom. The door clicked shut. A minute later, ding again, muffled through the wall. Then the sound of her typing. Send. Typing. Send. This played on repeat. Sit down at the table, phone pings. She excuses herself. Be right back. Bathroom. Lock. Silence. Ding. By 10 o'clock, I'd counted 7 bathroom trips. 7. I kept flipping pancakes, kept pretending I didn't notice. But inside, one thought got louder and louder. A faithful wife doesn't need to lock herself in the bathroom, to text the same man 7 times before breakfast. That night, she acted like everything was fine. Rachel had a late shift, so she got dressed in jeans and a nice top, sprayed on that vanilla perfume she knows I like. On her way out, she grabbed a small carry-on from the closet, the one she uses when she and Jenna do their little weekend escapes. "Girls' trip tomorrow, remember?" she said, almost casually. I leaned against the doorway, watching her slip on her shoes. "Right," I answered. "Where are you guys going again this weekend?" She didn't even pause. "Some cabin up in the mountains with Jenna," she said. "No cell service, just wine and Netflix and girl talk. You'll be fine without me for a couple days, right?" She laughed. I smiled back like it was cute, like my heart hadn't already checked out. She kissed me, grabbed her keys, and walked out. The front door shut, the house got quiet in that heavy way. I went straight to the bedroom. Nightstand, dresser, bathroom counter, no phone. She thought she'd grabbed it. She thought she was just walking out like always. She had no idea her lost phone was in my pocket. I waited until it was dark outside before I pulled her phone out. Just holding it felt wrong and right at the same time. Wrong, because no husband wants to be here. Right, because I already knew what I'd find. I just needed proof that could survive a courtroom, not a crying fit. I hit the screen. New lock screen. She'd changed the password. That was its own kind of answer. I tried the old code we used to share. No luck. I tried her birthday, our anniversary. Then I got colder. I tried his numbers. Evan's jersey number from his gym pics. The year he posted about changing his life. Nothing. I sat at the kitchen table, under that ugly overhead light, working through every pattern that made sense. Finally, After a few hours and way too many wrong guesses, one combination slid it open. The flood hit me all over again. New messages, fresh ones. Not just miss you and late night junk, but logistics, dates, times, hotel names, her girls' trip schedule, lined up perfectly with Evan's. That was a punch to the gut. She wasn't going to some quiet cabin with Jenna. She was booking a weekend away with her side guy. I kept scrolling, even though every line felt like sandpaper. Buried under the mess with Evan, I found another thread, this time with Jenna. At first, it read like normal girlfriend talk. Memes, complaints about work, gossip. Then it shifted. Little winks, hints, talk about finally getting away for a real weekend, and no husbands, no rules. Then I saw it. Rachel. Don't chicken out on me, okay? I need you there so Mark doesn't suspect anything. Jenna. Relax. He thinks we're doing face masks and wine. He's clueless. I just sat there staring at those two sentences. It wasn't just my marriage circling the drain. My brother's was right there with it. 2 houses, 2 lives, 2 idiots planning NFL Sundays, while their wives were plotting a sleepover with their side fun. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I deleted the open apps, cleared recent screens, set her phone exactly where she'd left it. Same angle, same charger. When she came home, I was already in bed, pretending to be half asleep. She slid in beside me, warm, back pressed against my chest like always. She fell asleep in minutes. I didn't sleep at all. That night, I lay next to the woman who had just blown my life apart, and she had no idea I knew. The next morning, I drove to work on autopilot. I couldn't tell you what songs played on the radio or how many lights I hit. I only remember sitting in the parking lot, engine still running, staring at my steering wheel like it had answers. Then I pulled out my phone and typed into Google, "Private investigator Plano, Texas cheating spouse." Names popped up, agencies I'd never heard of. I scrolled until one stuck, Delaney Investigative Services. No flashy website, just a simple page and a phone number. I called. The voice that answered was low, rough around the edges. Frank Delaney. I told him I needed to talk to someone about a possible affair. There was a pause, like he was measuring how bad this was going to be. Then he said, "Starbucks at Legacy West, 30 minutes. Bring whatever you've got." So I sat across from this older guy in a worn leather jacket while people around us ordered lattes and pumpkin bread like the world wasn't burning. I slid my phone across the table. Screenshots, dates, times. He scrolled in silence for a while, then looked up at me and said, "If she's stepping out on you, I'll catch her, but you'd better be ready for what you see." I thought I was ready for the truth, but Frank, who's worked over 300 cheating cases, said something that froze my blood. "You want the truth? Truth is never kind." And he was more right than I imagined. Frank laid it out like he'd done this 100 times, because he had. "I'll park down the street," he said. "Once she pulls out, I stay 2-3 cars back. I've got dash cams front and rear, long lens in the seat. If she goes somewhere she shouldn't, I'll know. I can also set up a live feed if you want to watch." The idea of watching my wife cheat on me in real time made my stomach flip. "You want to ride along?" he asked. I didn't even let him finish. "No," I said. "If I'm there, I'll do something stupid." On the drive home, my brain switched from hurt to survival mode. We had a prenup. There was a cheating clause. I'd signed it back when I thought we'd never need it, when it felt more like a formality than a lifeline. I sat at my desk and started calling divorce attorneys. 3 of them. Took notes. The one name that kept coming up was Alex Whitford. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about my heart getting broken. This was about my house, my savings, my future. I had to lawyer up. I wasn't letting her take me to the cleaners. But what Frank was about to uncover would make everything I'd seen so far feel small. The morning of the girls' trip felt wrong from the moment I woke up. Rachel was humming in the kitchen, moving around in that soft, familiar way. Eggs in the pan, bacon popping, coffee brewing. The news was mumbling in the background, talking about traffic and some politician. It could have been any Saturday we'd ever had. except it wasn't. I watched her pour coffee like I was watching a stranger play my wife. The way she smiled, the way she reached up to fix her hair, the way she asked, "You gonna miss me?" with that little smirk. Jenna showed up a little later, all smiles and energy. She hugged me, smelled like perfume and dry shampoo, joked about finally stealing your wife for a couple days. If I hadn't seen those messages, I would have believed every word. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Frank. In position, end of your street, silver sedan. I walked them out to the driveway, helped load Rachel's small suitcase into the back of Jenna's SUV. Rachel kissed me one more time, quick, easy, like nothing was wrong. They backed out, waved, and turned the corner. As their SUV disappeared down the street, my whole life followed right behind them, in Frank's car. And in less than 10 minutes, the first crack in her lie was about to appear. I went back inside to an empty house that suddenly felt too big. Frank had set me up with a login, so I opened my laptop, typed in the credentials, and there it was, a split-screen view from his dash cam and a long-lens camera. Jenna's SUV pulled into a Starbucks lot. I watched Rachel and Jenna climb out, laughing, hair pulled up, leggings and hoodies, just two suburban wives grabbing coffee before a mountain getaway. Frank snapped a few stills and texted them to me. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was something cute to post on Facebook. Girls' weekend. See you Monday. After they left Starbucks, I watched the GPS overlay on the feed. I knew the direction the cabin should have been in. I'd looked it up the night before just to see if her story matched. It didn't. Instead of heading north toward the state park, they took a different highway, then smaller roads, then a turn into a neighborhood I'd never seen before. Rows of rentals, compact yards, old trees hanging over the street. I stared at the screen, feeling my jaw tighten. That wasn't the road to a cabin. That was the road to another life she hadn't told me about. But the place they drove into wasn't a cabin. It was a life she built behind my back. The camera followed Jenna's SUV as it slowed, then stopped in front of a small, tired-looking rental house. Single story, blinds half open, one car already in the driveway. I watched Rachel get out on the passenger side. She smoothed her hair, checked herself in the window like she used to do before our dates. Then she walked up the short path to the front door. There was a pause. Door opened. Evan. I'd only seen him in photos before, gym selfies, mirror shots. Seeing him in motion, on my screen, standing in a doorway my wife was walking into, it hit different. He stepped out, smiled like he'd been waiting all week, and pulled her in. They hugged like they'd done it 100 times. Then, right there on the porch, they kissed. Slow, comfortable, not guilty, not awkward, practiced. Jenna stayed in the SUV, eyes glued to her phone, shoulders tight. She didn't get out. She didn't look up. My phone buzzed. Frank had sent a still image. Rachel in his arms, his hand on her back, her face tilted up. I just stared at it and whispered to myself, 8 years of marriage, for a kiss that lasted 15 seconds. And the worst part? That kiss wasn't even the real betrayal. I sat there staring at that frozen image of them on the porch, thinking like a husband and a man who'd read his prenup too many times. Was that kiss enough? In the eyes of a lawyer, sometimes a picture like that is all you need to prove inappropriate conduct. In the eyes of a husband, it was already a funeral. Pain was there, yeah. But something else started to grow over it, a kind of cold, steady focus. The part of me that fixes systems for a living started sorting through the mess. Evidence, timeline, outcomes. On the feed, Jenna's SUV pulled away from Evan's place. They drove to a Holiday Inn off the highway. Jenna got dropped at the front entrance with her overnight bag, then Rachel turned right back around and headed straight for Evan's neighborhood again. I watched the little GPS arrow trace the route, feeling sicker with every mile. Somewhere in all this, I had this thought. Maybe Jenna doesn't know the full story. Or maybe she does, and my brother is just as blind as I was. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Mark. Girls got there okay. Game on Sunday? My brother was asking about football, while his wife was at a hotel for a completely different reason. Night fell, and the house felt hollow. I was on the couch, TV on mute, not really watching anything. My phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. Miss you, honey. Wish you were here. Right after that, a notification from Frank. New clip. I opened his video first. Rachel was sitting on a couch in that same rental living room I'd seen earlier. A glass of red wine in her hand, legs tucked under her like she used to do at home. Evan was next to her, grinning, leaning in close. Another guy, Tyler, I'd later learn, was across from them, beer in hand. Music low, laughter loud, bodies relaxed. My wife missing me in a place she'd never mentioned, with people she'd never named. Then I tapped back to her text and read it again. Miss you, honey. The knife wasn't just that she was cheating. It was that she was using the same words, the same tone she used with me while sitting in another man's house. A little while later, Mark texted me that Jenna had sent something vague too. We're having fun, don't wait up, that kind of thing. No cabin photos, no mountains, just smoke. We got on the phone, both of us walking circles in our separate kitchens, comparing notes we weren't ready to admit out loud. Somewhere in the middle of that call, one clear thought cut through the fog. You don't do that to your family. Later that evening, Frank texted again. They're all together, restaurant next to the hotel. I opened the live feed and there they were on the patio. Evan, Rachel, Jenna, and a guy I didn't recognize yet, Tyler. There were empty glasses on the table, plates pushed aside. Rachel was wearing a pair of sunglasses I'd never seen before, big black frames that looked a lot like the ones Evan had in his gym selfies. Jenna was smiling, but it was tight, like her face didn't quite believe the expression. I sent the link to Mark. A minute later, he joined the stream. For a while, we didn't say anything, just watched our wives laugh in a world we weren't invited to. Then I heard his breathing change. I'm going down there, he said. Right now, I don't care. I'm not sitting here while she does this. I could hear keys in his hand, the scrape of a chair. Mark, I cut in, sharper than I meant to. If you blow up now, we lose everything. No more PI, no more proof, just a screaming match and two women denying everything. He went quiet. A man can only take so much, I said. But if we lose our heads now, we lose our future too. The next morning, my phone buzzed before the alarm. Frank again. They're in the lobby. Look rough. I pulled up the feed. Rachel and Jenna were slumped on a couch in the hotel lobby, coffee cups in front of them, eyes puffy. Jenna had her head in her hands like the light was too bright. Rachel was scrolling her phone, then setting it down, then picking it up again, restless. I didn't need a recording of what happened in that room last night. I could read it in their bodies. Mark called a few minutes later. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't slept either. You think he started, then stopped. Hope and dread fighting in one sentence. I think, I said slowly, we don't know enough to say anything yet. Not if we want this to hold up when it matters. That became the plan. Act clueless. Let them walk back into our homes thinking we were still in the dark, while we quietly stacked every piece of proof we could. After we hung up, I called Alex Whitford's office and booked a real sit-down. Watching that lobby feed, it hit me. We weren't just two husbands anymore. We were two plaintiffs, waiting for the right time to blow this up. When checkout time rolled around, Frank stayed with them. He followed Jenna's SUV as it pulled out of the hotel lot, hung back a few car lengths like he'd explained. I was on the couch with my laptop open, watching it all in real time like some sick reality show I never signed up for. First stop, Evan's place. The SUV slowed to the curb. Rachel got out, walked up to his driveway like she'd done it a dozen times before. Frank zoomed in. I could see her laugh at something he said, touch his arm, lean in. Then she did it again. Another kiss. Longer this time. Broad daylight, out in the open, no hesitation. The kind of goodbye you give someone you're already planning to see again. Jenna sat behind the wheel, staring straight ahead. My phone pinged as Frank sent through a burst of high-res stills. I downloaded everything, dropped it into an encrypted folder, and pushed a backup to that hidden email account. Names, dates, locations, images. I exhaled, a bitter little half-laugh. I had what I needed. I had just watched my wife kiss another man, without ever leaving my sofa. But when they walked through the front door, I wasn't the one who lied first. She was. If I didn't have evidence, I might have actually believed her performance. When they finally came back, it was almost surreal. I heard the car, then the front door, keys in the lock. Rachel stepped in first with her overnight bag, hair a mess, eyes a little red. Jenna was right behind her. Mark and I were sitting in the living room, TV on some game we weren't really watching. "Honey, I'm home," Rachel called out like this was some sitcom. She walked straight over to me, dropped her bag, and wrapped her arms around my neck. It wasn't her usual quick hug. She held on tight, too tight. I could feel her chest shaking before I heard anything. Then she started crying. Real tears, full sobs. She kissed me, hard, desperate, like she was trying to rewrite the last 48 hours with one move. Across the room, Jenna sat down next to Mark but couldn't look at him. Arms folded, eyes glued to some invisible spot on the carpet. I played dumb. "What's going on?" I asked quietly. "You okay?" Rachel pulled back just enough to look at me, mascara smudged, voice shaking. "I was forced," she said. "I didn't want to do any of it. He made me, I swear." We moved to the kitchen table, the four of us. It's funny how that table had seen birthday cakes, Thanksgiving dinners, stupid arguments about money, and now it was hosting the slow-motion autopsy of 2 marriages. Rachel sat next to me, Jenna next to Mark. Rachel wiped her face, took a breath, and launched into version 1. She said Evan had something on her, some secret from years back, something she couldn't risk me finding out. He threatened to tell me if she didn't meet up, didn't kiss him, didn't play along. "I didn't want to," she kept saying. "He pressured me. I was scared. I just went along so he'd leave me alone." I nodded, asked soft questions. When did it start? Why didn't she tell me? What exactly did he have on her? I played it like I was clinging to hope, like I wanted to believe there was some twisted logic behind all this. But while she talked, I watched Jenna. She shifted in her chair, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes rolling just a little when Rachel leaned too hard on the "he made me" part. Mark saw it too. I could feel his stare bounce between her face and Rachel's story. "Sit down," I finally said. "All of us. No phones, no half-truths. Tell us everything. Both of you." The problem was, they both already knew the whole truth. The only people in that room who didn't were me and my brother. There was this long, ugly silence after I said that. Then Jenna broke. She sat up straighter, wiped her cheeks, and said, "Fine, I'll tell you what really happened." According to Jenna's version, Rachel had been hyping up this mountain resort for weeks. Girls only, spa, wine, hot tub, no husbands. When they actually hit the road, Rachel changed the plan, steered them toward the hotel and Evan's place. "She's been a bad influence lately," Jenna said, voice shaking but pointed. She kept pushing and pushing. "Come on, just live a little. Nobody will ever know. I didn't even want to go to that house." Rachel snapped her head around. "Are you serious right now?" "You're such a liar, Jenna." They went back and forth, Rachel saying she was scared and trapped, Jenna saying she was dragged into it by Rachel, both of them trying to come out looking like the reluctant victim. Mark and I just sat there, listening to 2 competing scripts, both with big holes in them. In Jenna's story, there was no mention of Tyler, no mention of them all at dinner, or the lobby, or the hotel lobby hangover. In Rachel's, the secret Evan had on her never got specific. It was all shadows and drama. Nobody talked about Starbucks. Nobody talked about the other guy. And all I could think was, if she was really innocent, she wouldn't need to invent an entire story just to sound less guilty. At some point, I got tired of the soap opera. "Enough," I said. "No more stories. No more, he said, she said. I want it straight." They both went quiet. I looked at Rachel first. "What exactly did you do? With who?" She stared at the table, then at her hands, then finally at me. "We kissed," she said. "A couple times. And some stuff. It didn't go all the way. I stopped it. I swear." Some stuff. Like putting a bow on garbage. I turned to Jenna. "And you?" She swallowed. "I just talked to Tyler. That's it. We had a few drinks. We held hands a little. Nothing happened. I didn't sleep with anyone." Mark let out this tiny breath, like he wanted to be relieved but his brain wouldn't let him. His eyes were wet and suspicious at the same time. Then came the chorus. Rachel crying into her palms, Jenna wiping her face. "We're sorry. We messed up. It was a mistake." I watched them both shake and sob around the edges of the same half-truths and realized they weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught. They were sorry, but not because of what they did. They were sorry because they got caught, and they had no idea I still had one last card to play. Eventually, the first round had to end. Mark and Jenna left, driving back to their house with the windows up and the air thick. I watched their taillights disappear and felt this strange split inside me, part brother, part witness. When I walked back in, Rachel was still at the table, eyes red, tissues scattered like confetti after a bad party. "Can we fix this?" she asked. "We can go to counseling. We can start over. I'll block him. I'll do whatever you want." I sat down across from her, and for a second, all I saw was the girl I married at 27. Then, like a slideshow, all the images hit me again. The screenshots, the live feed, the porch kiss, the hotel, the text messages she sent him at 3 a.m. while I slept 6 feet away. "I'm going ahead with the divorce," I said quietly. She recoiled like I'd slapped her. "You're betraying me," she snapped. "We're husband and wife. We're supposed to stand by each other through everything. How can you just walk away?" I stood up, grabbed my keys. She called me a traitor, right after cheating on me all weekend. I left her crying in our kitchen and walked out of the house. That night, I didn't go back home. I crashed on Mark's couch. We ended up in his kitchen around midnight, 2 grown men hunched over a laptop like teenagers watching something they weren't supposed to see. Only this time, it was our own lives on the screen. Frank had sent over more footage. In the hotel lobby, there they were, Rachel, Jenna, Evan, and Tyler. All 4 of them laughing, leaning in, sharing jokes over cheap drinks like it was the best weekend of their year. Jenna bumped Tyler's shoulder. Rachel touched Evan's arm. Easy, familiar. Mark stared at the screen for a long time without saying anything. Then his face crumpled. He slammed his palm down on the table so hard the beer bottles rattled and just broke. Full-on sobbing, shoulders shaking, like someone cut a wire inside him. I wanted to lose it with him. Instead, I put a hand on the table and forced my voice to stay steady. "We need to keep our heads clear," I said. "This is our future we're dealing with, not just tonight." Because the truth was, I wasn't just fighting for my heart. I was fighting for my house, my savings, my future. Early the next morning, my phone lit up with a message from Rachel. "I can't keep lying. I need to tell you everything. Please come home." Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part knew this was another layer I had to hear, if only to see how deep the hole went. So I drove back, walked into my own kitchen like a guest, and sat down across from her at the same table where we'd planned vacations and argued over bills. She looked wrecked. No makeup, eyes swollen, hands wrapped around a cold mug she wasn't drinking from. "There's more," she said. "What I told you wasn't the whole truth." Of course it wasn't. She went on. "Jenna didn't just hold hands with Tyler. They slept together, more than once. And it wasn't just Rachel with Evan and Jenna with Tyler. They switched at one point, swapped partners, tried everything they'd been curious about." She said it like she was unloading a weight, but every word landed on me instead. Every time she said, "That's all," there was always more. After that last confession from Rachel, I knew I couldn't let this stay between just her and me. I texted Mark. "We need them both in the same room, today." He didn't argue. A few hours later, we were all in his kitchen, the 4 of us around his table like some twisted mirror of every family dinner we'd ever had. No food, no TV, just tension thick enough to choke on. Jenna sat with her arms crossed, eyes already wet. Rachel stared at a knot in the wood grain like it might save her. Mark opened with, "We need the truth. All of it." His voice was flat, worn out. Jenna jumped in first. She said Rachel had pulled her into everything, that she didn't want to go to the hotel, didn't want to see Tyler, didn't want to do anything, but Rachel kept pushing. "She's been different lately," Jenna said. "Wild, reckless. She dragged me along." Rachel snapped her head up. That's crap, and you know it. We both agreed. Half of this was your idea. They went at it, trying to out-victim each other, tossing blame back and forth like a hot potato. Finally, I'd had enough. I stood up and said, "Enough. We're all adults here. Nobody forced anybody to sleep with anyone." And for the first time, both of them shut up. The silence after that felt heavier than any yelling could have. Jenna tried to hold her glare for another second, then it cracked. Her shoulders dropped, her face twisted, and she just broke. The words tumbled out between sobs. "Fine," she said. "We both wanted it, okay? We wanted to try something new." She admitted it all. Rachel with Evan, Jenna with Tyler. Then switching. Testing boundaries like they were playing some kind of game, while their rings sat on hotel nightstands. She described it like it was some stupid experience, something they'd been curious about, talked about for months, and finally decided to do while their husbands thought they were drinking wine in a cabin. Mark didn't yell, didn't cry this time either. He just went very, very still. All the color drained from his face. He looked at the floor, then at nothing, like his brain had stepped out of the room and left his body behind. I looked at him and knew, without either of us saying it, we both lost our wives in that kitchen. There weren't any excuses left. No half-truths. No, I was drunk. No, it didn't mean anything. We walked in there with wives. We walked out with future ex-wives. If you think that was rock bottom, you won't believe what happened next. When it was finally over, there was nothing left to say. We all stood up from the table at the same time, chairs scraping the floor. The air in Mark's house felt used up. You could taste the end of something in it. Jenna walked over to Rachel, tears streaming, voice cracking. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. You're my best friend." She reached out and hugged her. For a second, Rachel just stood there, arms at her sides. Then she snapped. She pulled back and slapped Jenna across the face. The sound of it cracked through the living room. Sharp. Final. Jenna's head jerked to the side. A red print started blooming on her cheek. She didn't slap back. She just stared at the floor and sobbed. Mark didn't move. He didn't step in, didn't defend either of them. He just watched, like he was witnessing the last piece of his old life break in half. I turned to him and said quietly, "I'm sorry, man, for all of it." He nodded once. Rachel and I walked out of that house without another word. That slap wasn't just the end of their friendship. It was the period at the end of both marriages. Only a few days later, the story stopped being about betrayal and became about the law. A few days later, the legal side of all this showed up in my inbox. Email from Alex Whitford. Subject line, "Draft Callahan divorce petition." I opened the attachment and started reading line by line. Dry language, case numbers, dates. Petitioner, Travis Callahan. Respondent, Rachel Callahan. Seeing my name in that column hit different. Rachel was home, moving around the house like a ghost. We barely spoke. No more small talk. No more "how was your day?" Just quiet footsteps, doors opening and closing, the washing machine running in the background like nothing had changed. I went out to the garage, pulled a stack of empty boxes down, and started packing. My things, not ours. Old hoodies, tools, framed photos where I quietly slipped the pictures out and left the frames. A couple of books I actually cared about. The watch my dad gave me. Piece by piece, I moved parts of my life into cardboard. The house looked the same from the street. Same porch light, same 2 cars in the driveway. But inside, it was already coming apart. Marriage doesn't end when you sign the papers. It ends when you start putting your life in boxes. Just when I thought things couldn't get stranger, someone else showed up at my door. A few mornings later, the doorbell rang while I was halfway through my first cup of coffee. I wasn't expecting anyone. Rachel was in the bedroom. The house was quiet. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, walked to the front door, and opened it. Jenna was standing on my porch. Next to her was a uniformed officer from the local department, not the lights and sirens type, just the calm, clipboard kind they send for noise complaints and neighbor disputes. "Mr. Callahan?" he asked. "We're just here for a civil issue. I'm only present to keep things calm." Jenna crossed her arms, eyes swollen but hard. She didn't say hi. She didn't ask how I was. "I don't want you or Mark contacting me ever again," she said. "No calls, no texts, no showing up, nothing. You two have made my life completely unstable. I'm done with all this drama." I just stared at her for a second, trying to process the upside down of it. The woman who cheated on my brother was now standing on my doorstep telling me we ruined her life. The cheater at my door, acting like she was the victim. Jenna kept going, words spilling out like she'd rehearsed them in the car. "I'm filing for a restraining order," she said. "Against you, against Mark, and against Rachel too. If any of you come within a certain distance of me, you'll be fined or worse. I'm not playing around." I glanced at the officer. He lifted one shoulder, that little shrug cops do when they're basically saying, "This is between y'all. I'm just here so nobody throws a punch. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic." Then Jenna dropped another line. "I'm also getting tested," she said, "for STDs. God knows what I might have gotten from all of this. If I hear any rumors about me, I'll add defamation to the list." That one hit in a different way. Because as twisted as everything was, she wasn't wrong about the risk. They'd all been sleeping with each other like it was a game, and now she was scared of the fallout. In that moment, I realized I needed to get tested too. She blew up her marriage and set fire to our lives, and now she was terrified of the ashes. Her words didn't sound like fear. They sounded like an attack. A few days later, I found myself sitting in a clinic waiting room with a plastic wristband and a clipboard in my hand. The air felt colder in there. Too bright. Too clean. There were a couple of other people scattered around. A guy in work boots staring at the floor, a young woman scrolling her phone, an older couple whispering. Each of them probably had their own mess, their own version of, "How did I end up here?" I never thought cheating would put me in a place like this. One weekend. That's all it took for my health, my future, to get tossed onto the table like it didn't matter. While she was out tasting other fish in the sea, like she put it once as a joke, she was gambling with more than just vows and rings. She was gambling with my body, my life. They called my name, and as I stood up, it hit me in a way it hadn't before. Cheating isn't just about broken hearts. It's about broken safety. There was one more conversation I knew I had to have before everything became official. I called Rachel's parents and asked if they could come over one afternoon when she wasn't home. They sounded worried in that polite, quiet way parents do when they know something is wrong but don't know how bad it is yet. We sat in the living room, them on the couch, me in the chair I used to fall asleep in on holidays. I walked them through it. Not every filthy detail, but enough. The late-night messages, the phone, the PI, the hotel, the other man, and then the other one after that. Her mom covered her mouth. Her dad stared at the coffee table like he wanted to punch through it. You could see the shame and the hurt fight inside them, hurting for me, hurting for their daughter, embarrassed by what she'd done. Finally, her dad asked, "Is there any way you two can work through this? Any chance of forgiveness?" I took my time before I answered. "Forgiveness isn't the same as staying," I said. "I can forgive her one day maybe, but I can't keep living inside a lie." But then her father asked me a question that made the entire room go silent. The follow-up meeting with Alex Whitford felt less like therapy and more like a business review. His office was in one of those glass and brick buildings off the highway. Clean lobby, neutral art, fake plants. I sat across from him at a conference table, not a couch. Laptop open, manila folders stacked. "We're down to terms now," he said. "Assets, accounts, the house." The house was non-negotiable for me. "I want to keep it," I told him. "I've already lost enough. I don't want to lose my roots too." He nodded. "With the prenup and the PI evidence, you're in a strong position. We can argue marital misconduct. That gives you leverage on the property." We went through numbers, retirement accounts, the cars, who keeps what debt. It was all very organized, very logical, like a spreadsheet version of the life we'd built together. He slid a few documents across the table. I signed where he pointed. Initials here, date there. By the end of it, my hand was cramped and my chest felt hollow. We started with vows in a church and ended with signatures in an office park. A couple days later, Mark called. "Paperwork's filed," he said. No hello, no warm-up. "It's official. I'm divorcing Jenna." There was a beat of silence on the line. Then we both did that awkward half-laugh guys do when something hurts and there's nothing smart left to say. We started talking about the future because talking about the past was too heavy. How we'd split up watching Cowboys games. Maybe alternate Sundays at each other's places. Joked about going back to some kind of bachelor life, even though we both knew it wouldn't look anything like being 20 again. The jokes didn't land all the way, but they kept us moving. We agreed on one thing without any hesitation. When this was over, we were done. No more texts from Rachel, no more calls from Jenna, no just checking in, no second chances, no drunk late-night apologies. Clean cut, for both of us. That evening, we sat on the front steps of my place with 2 beers, watching the sun go down over the same quiet street we'd thought we'd grow old on with them. Soon, it'll just be me and my brother, and 2 ghosts named Rachel and Jenna. Cleaning the house felt more brutal than any argument we ever had. I took our wedding photos down first. The big framed one from the ceremony, the beach trip where we looked like a postcard, the Christmas shot in matching sweaters she made us wear. I slid the pictures out of the frames and stacked them face down in a drawer. The empty frames went back up on the wall for a while. Same spots, same nails, just no story inside them anymore. It looked strange, lighter, and at the same time, completely hollow. I started building new routines because the old ones hurt too much. Early gym before work, cooking simple dinners for one, eating at the same table that had seen birthdays, fights, apologies, and now just my plate and a glass of water. One afternoon, an email came in from Alex's office with the final date. Court approval, case number, the day everything would be officially stamped and done. I sat there at that table, phone in my hand, staring at the words. My marriage was over, but I wasn't. And then came the day I thought I'd be the most nervous about, but ended up feeling strangely calm. The day we signed the papers was almost boring, if I'm honest. No screaming, no dramatic scene in the parking lot, just fluorescent lights, a conference room, a paralegal sliding pages in front of us one by one. Rachel sat across from me, hair done, makeup on, looking more like a coworker than the woman I'd spent 8 years with. Pens clicked, paper rustled. Sign here, initial there. That was the soundtrack. When it was done, Rachel looked up at me and said, "I'm sorry," one last time. The words were right, but they didn't land anywhere. There was nothing left in me to receive them. I just nodded. I walked out of that building into bright Texas sun, blinking like I'd been underground for months. The air felt different, lighter in my lungs, heavier in my chest. I stood by my car for a minute, keys in my hand, and realized 8 years ended. Turns out what I lost was only a person. What I kept was my life. When I look back, it all started with something simple. Picking up my wife's phone to answer a text from my brother. From that moment to signing those divorce papers, it feels like I watched my own life burn in slow motion. And here's what I've learned. Cheating isn't just sex. It's lies. It's risk. It's taking a match to your own home for a weekend of fun. In the end, a man doesn't need much. He needs a roof over his head that actually feels safe. He needs people around him who don't stab him in the back. And he needs enough self-respect to walk away when those first 2 are gone. I lost a wife, but I kept my house, my future, and the one thing I refuse to bargain with now, my self-respect. So let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you walk away or try to fix it? Drop it in the comments. Team walk away or team try to fix? And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video and hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.